Thank you for stopping by. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, for whatever time zone you're currently residing in. I hope that you have been accomplishing all the goals that you've set out and life is treating you quite well. Today, here on the Top Cats Rebel Connection, I want to touch on a topic that I know many people should be informed about. And that topic is U.S. President's executive orders. What are they? We are hearing in the mainstream media about all of these executive orders that President Donald Trump has made law, has signed into force, which is really causing a huge melee in a lot of countries as well as in our country. These executive orders are in fact law, and they have come from the chief of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Firstly, I must state that there is no constitutional provision or statute that explicitly permits executive orders. Let me say that again. I must state that there is no constitutional provisions or statutes that explicitly permits executive orders. However, the term executive order, this is the term which is a executive power, and most of it is based in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1 of the Constitution, which refers to the office of the president as the executive. Most executive orders use these constitutional reasonings as the authorization allowing for the issuance, U.S.A, to be justified as part of the president's sworn duties. An executive order of the president must find support in the Constitution. Regardless of what the president wants to do, it must find support in the Constitution, either in a clause granting the president specific power or by a delegation of power by Congress to the president. Okay, now, with that said, let's just do a bit of digging. Executive orders. These are also known as EOs. EOs, executive orders, for short. And they are legally binding orders given by the president, acting as the head of the executive branch. There are 3 branches of government, and this one is acting as the head of the executive branch to the federal administrative agencies. Executive orders are generally used to direct federal agencies and officials in their execution of congressionally established laws or policies. In other words, executive orders are simply presidential directives issued to agents of the executive department by its boss, which of course is the U.S. president. Executive orders are also subject to judicial review and may be struck down if deemed by the courts to be unsupported by statutes or the Constitution. The consequence to any president failing to comply with their executive orders being supported by statutes or the Constitution, the consequence to any president failing to comply is removal from office. Now, not all EOs, executive orders, are created equal. For example, proclamations are a special type of executive order. Proclamations that are generally ceremonial or symbolic, such as when the president declares something like a national take your child to work day. Another, what they call subset of executive orders, are those concerned with national security or defense issues and topics and stuff like that. Although these EOs executive orders, are generally known as national security directives. And they've also been titled in the past as presidential decision directives. So there's more than one title for executive orders depending on what area the executive order is being written towards or being written for, if you will. Executive orders do not require congressional approval to take effect, but they have the same legal weight as laws passed by Congress. The president's source of authority to issue executive orders can be found in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, which grants the president the executive power. This is Q Pate, Concrete Jungle Reporter and 411 content creator. To all those who stop by to check out our videos on YouTube at Top Cats Pride, I want you to know that we are making some video upload changes. We will be uploading videos 2 times per month, and all other uploads will be TRC shows, Top Cats Rebel Connection shows. This adjustment, starting the 3rd week of January 2017, is necessary as to provide you with up to 50% more content. Our videos take about 50% more time to create, edit, and upload. So with this new, more efficient plan to provide you with content, it will remove the many hours necessary just to publish one broadcast, which is usually at least between 24 to 30 hours, but oftentimes more time than that time that I just mentioned for the time. Be sure to subscribe and or check back with us often at Spreaker.com/TOPKATSAIRBORN. That's Spreaker, SPREAKER.com/. anchor.com/Top Cats Airborne for all shows. Thanks for hunting for knowledge and truth with the Top Cats Pride and the Top Cats Rebel Connection. I'd like to big up all of the producers and different artists around the world and make it possible for the Top Cats Rebel Connection to be able to have some archives on ready for different shows and stuff like that. For different shows, you need different vibes. And I would like to thank them, including my wife, Lenny, for hooking up different big beats so we can have them in the show. Appreciate that, y'all. Touching base with you today and bringing a little something about the U.S. presidents and executive orders and what they are. I have compiled this information from various websites on the internet, including the government website in Washington, D.C. .gov is the URL extension. And I just had to come and share this information with you so that at least we have a clear knowledge, have a very intact concept of what an executive order is and what an executive order isn't. Before we went to the vibe session, we were touching on executive orders and them not requiring congressional approval to take effect, but they have the same legal weight as laws passed by Congress, these executive orders from the president. The president's source of authority to issue executive orders, they can be found in Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, which grants the president executive power. Section 3 of Article 2 further directs the president to take care that laws be faithfully executed. To take care that laws be faithfully executed. To implement or to execute the laws of the land. Presidents give direction and guidance to executive branch agencies and departments, often in the form of what I'm talking about, executive orders. Now, let's rewind here for a bit, because I want you to know through my research that I found out that executive orders have been used by every chief executive, the president, since the time of President George Washington. Many important policies, changes, and stuff like that, they have occurred through executive orders. Currently, there are over 13,100 numbered executive orders on the books. And executive orders, they're pretty controversial because they allow the president to make major decisions, even laws, without the consent of Congress. This, as you may notice, seems contradictory if you think about it to the general logic of the Constitution, because in that, no one should have the power to act by themselves in the government. However, Congress often gives the president considerable leeway in implementing and administrating federal law and programs. Sometimes Congress can't agree on how to implement a law or how to implement a program. So this situation leaves the decision to the federal agencies involved and the president that stands at their head, which is currently Donald J. Trump. Conclusively, when Congress fails to spell out in detail how a law is to be executed, it leaves the door open, giving the president an option and opportunity to provide those details in the form of executive orders. Now, I have some trivia here that I wanted to share with you because there is some scholastic nutrition therein. But check this out. The president that has issued the most executive orders prior to President Donald Trump is former President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He issued 3,721 executive orders while in office from March 1933 to April 1945. As a Democrat, he won a record 4 presidential elections, and that made him the longest running president in U.S. history up until this particular date, here during the last few days of January 2017. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the D is for Delano, was born in January on the 30th, 1882, and he died on April 12th, 1945. But he issued 3,721 executive orders while in office from March 1933 to April 1945. And these don't have to be approved by Congress. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was the 32nd president of the United States. Now, the president that issued the least amount of executive orders prior to President Donald Trump is President William Henry Harrison. He issued no executive orders, 0. By the way, President William Harrison was the 9th president of the U.S. and only served 1 month in office back in March and April of 1841 due to him dying from complications from pneumonia. And thus far, he has served the shortest tenure in the U.S. presidential history. President William H. Harrison was born in February on the 9th, 1773, and he died on April 4th, 1841. Additionally, other U.S. presidents who issued 10 or less executive orders while in office are President Martin Van Buren with 10. He issued 10 executive orders while in office. George Washington with 8. James Garfield with 6. Zachary Taylor with 5. And Thomas Jefferson with 4. John Quincy Adams with 3. James Madison with 1. John Adams with 1. And lastly, President James Monroe issued 1 executive order while in office. Edutainment wrapped in eclectic music. Last week of January 2017, and I hope everything gets itself straightened out with a quickness in the United States at the airports with the different immigrants that were being detained or not being able to leave the country. It's a huge melee at the JFK airport in New York City, over there in the Queens area. They've been having a lot of problems, a lot of circumstances arise because of the recent executive order from President Donald Trump that had to do with immigrants from Muslim countries not being allowed to enter America. And with people that were there that were going to leave, the reason why the people were still remaining at the airport or being detained, in some cases that I've read on the mainstream media news from the internet, the reason why they were being detained is because if they left the country and they wanted to come back during the 90-day period that is currently set by the president, they would not be able to return. And many of them had green cards. They already had permission to live in the United States. So there has been a huge amount of difficulties that have surmounted many airports around our country. And I just want to wish that the whole situation comes to a viable, very livable type of conclusion. And what I wanted to do before we wrap things up here on the show is conclusively put this report to you, for you, together. Now, as of this report here during the last few days of January 2017, President Donald Trump has issued 14 executive orders. Also, my research couldn't find the legal limit a president can't go beyond with issuing executive orders. My research couldn't find the legal limit a president can't go beyond with issuing executive orders. And that's really strange because that makes me conclude, even when I go on the .gov extension website, which is for the United States government, I can't find any information about how long a president can issue executive orders. My conclusion is it is infinite as long as the Congress doesn't call the president to task or the people. And these unlimited amount of executive orders which the president can issue will remain the law until amended, rescinded, or overturned. And by the way, the ultimate criticism of executive orders in many political circles and on many mainstream news is that the runaway use of EOs could result in a president becoming a virtual dictator, capable of making major policy decisions without any congressional or judicial input, as well as oversight. The U.S. President executive orders are recorded in the Federal Registry and are considered binding. Plus, they are subject to legal review. If you want to see how many executive orders any president has issued, to include the current president, you have to go to the Federal Registry. U.S. President Executive Orders, Federal Registry, is what you should put into any search engine if you are interested in seeing the executive orders that past presidents and the current president has put into force. My name is Q Pate here on the Top Cats Rebel Connection, and I'd like to thank you for stopping by.